Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got our regular Sunday Matt joining us here today, so very happy to have him on once again. We were just talking about the fact that in the new year, he's not going to be around on Sundays, so we're going to figure out a time period for him to get in on the shows and so on and so forth. That's going to be all up to next year, though. Now, while I am getting down that rabbit hole, y'all should get down this rabbit hole. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff to get your emails in the mornings or afternoons whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we will engage them directly, kind of like this one. Salty Jinx. Evening, everyone. Winterstorm, Chris, all, and Vanessa Chaos jumps in here saying, good evening, good to see you, Vanessa. Matt, do you want to give us a quick 10 to 15 seconds? Who are you, where you come from, all that good stuff? And then we'll get into the combo.
Yeah, sure. So ex-combat engineer with Canadian Armed Forces, retired medically, turned chef, turned meat cutter, turned mixologist, turned. Now I'm back in school for hospitality and looking to keep on the service of others. Also a health and life coach on the side and using that more to help me than to other people currently, but still there to help as needed.
I like it. I like it. So, what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to be talking about the acceptance of self. So, what does that even mean? Well, self-acceptance is defined as an individual's acceptance of all of their attributes, positive or negative. When we're self-accepting, we embrace every part of ourselves and not just the positive things. Self-acceptance is unconditional. You can recognize weaknesses, but still fully accept yourself. To be self-accepting is to feel satisfied with who you are, despite flaws and regardless of past choices. And I think that was a great definition. I really liked it. But Matt, why don't you give us a quick first thought, and we'll start walking around it. Here you go.
No, I kind of agree with that one. Self-acceptance is basically, yeah, it is your positives and your negatives, and coming to the understanding and conclusion of what those are together, right? It's not necessarily that your negatives take away from yourself or that your positive adds to yourself, is that everything together makes you as a whole. And then you just have to, not even saying have to, it's just the way it is of being with those flaws and benefits. It is who you are. And then, yeah.
I like it. Shaun, first thoughts?
So what are we? Who are we? What is self?
He's always coming up with the hard questions right off the bat. and we've been talking about this all week, though. This is the defining ourselves week. We've been getting into this, all of these questions. But personally, I think self is made up of all of everything that we have done throughout our life up until this point. Whether that is good, whether that is bad, whether that is crazy, whether it's painful, whether it's awesome, all of the things amalgamated into our thought patterns today. Matt, what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's what is self? And I mean, define it. And then if you don't like it, change it too as well. Like, even though you have to accept the goods and the bads, it doesn't mean you have to stay with that either. You don't have to be defined by what other people or what situations or what your experiences are, right? For the longest times, I didn't really appreciate as much that I was a veteran out of the armed forces. I felt burnt coming out, and that lack of acceptance actually was a hindrance for me, both professionally and in the industry as well as education wise, right? But it is an amagment of two of the things, the goods and the bads and whatever you had, right? If we want to get into the id and the ego and the self and all that good jazz, I mean, that's really, we're getting, I charge $200 an hour, and we can go down that rabbit hole if we wanted to.
That'd be a fun rabbit hole. I don't have the money for that one, but Shaun, maybe he does. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I'll be sending the invoice. So if self is our experiences, our good, our bad, or ugly, all of the etc., I think that most people, 99.97% of people, think of themselves as the external outcomes, how we're viewed, what we did, all of that good stuff. A lot of it is externality. But there's a whole other piece of the algorithm, and that is the internal universe, which I think very few people consider or even less people spend any time in. And by time, I mean like consistent time, tangible time, repeated time, time enough to be notable time. And so spending 12 seconds in your internal universe per day in my world is not enough time. And so, what self are we talking about? Because I'm getting the feeling that I'm going to be sending a really big invoice to a couple of dudes right now on the show, because a lot of this conversation is externalized rather than internalized. And Matt threw out some terms there that are often thrown out, but are given no internal thought. They're externally considered through the Webster's Dictionary or through a classroom monologue or at the University 101, where 23 kids talk to 27 other kids and have a debate about some dry, boring bookwork that goes nowhere other than in the external world in circles to debate what it means from one novel to the other novel. Whereas the only true novel that matters, I think, is the internal novel rather than the external novel. So who am I sending the invoice to?
It's funny you bring that up because I picked experience the world specifically because a lot of things happen throughout our lives, and a lot of things that we do, a lot of things that we have done or happen to us are, as you said, external things. They're not. They happen, and then they're not really thought of afterwards in that manner. And the reason I picked, how we experience life is because it is an internal concept. It is how we view all of these things happening. So as you said, Matt, you're a veteran. I'm a veteran. Shaun's a veteran. It wasn't until until I took the time to look at what a veteran was and accept that I was one of them, because for many years I never looked at a veteran. I didn't look at someone my age as a veteran. I saw veterans as the World War II guys, the Korean guys, the Bosnian, all of the older gentlemen that had come before. I saw them as veterans, but I didn't see myself as one. And it wasn't until I took the time to actually view what I had done within my service to understand that I was one. And then I started postulating, oh, well, that changes how I view what a veteran is in general, which is again why I work so hard to tell people that, you don't get out of the military and become a civilian again. You get out of the military and now you're a veteran. And it's something that it's a mindset shift that you have to step into in order to move away from being a soldier, if that makes sense. Matt, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's internalizing external experiences too, right? Because you've experienced being a soldier, you experienced going through the trials and tribulations of what was required of you, operational or not. But when you get out and you're no longer a soldier, right? And then there was the acceptance, internal acceptance of, yeah, I was, but now I'm not. And then it's like, but now I'm a veteran, which is a different, I want to say evolution. Evolution, I like that word. Evolution from where you were, right? Externally, people still see you as a former soldier, right? Veteran or not. When I'm going through school and stuff, like a lot of people comments, especially instructors that know me, is like, yeah, you were a soldier. It wasn't like you were a veteran. You were a soldier, right? So externally, that's still something that pops up. But internally, I'm thinking of myself now as a veteran. I've been there, done that, and now I'm taking those skills and I'm moving on to the next level, right? Carrying on what I've learned previously and bring it into my new industry. And that's evident with a lot of things I'm doing. It can be cooking. I'm using like the NATO's 7-paragraph standard orders as my kitchen plan for the day, or it's that I'm doing conflict management in hospitality where I'm addressing the concern of a customer or a guest and using the conflict management skills I've used in the Army. Not necessarily yelling at your face and across the drill square kind of way of conflict management, but it's the stress level I can control that I learned from being a soldier, bringing it as a veteran that I'm now using as hospitality. So it's an external, what the external view on me is being, from being an ex-soldier. Internally, I'm now grasping those skills and using them for another vision entity of myself, right? So I'm accepting one and using it for another.
I like that. Shaun, any thoughts to add on this?
Yeah, maybe I came in with not enough coffee and I feel a bit spicy, so I'm going to really freaking turn this thing inside out.
Let's get it.
So let's do it. And so I've heard two guys throw out the veteran title after they got out of the military. And I think that you have assigned a title to something that you always were. Chance, I've heard you say it many a time, and I think I've heard you say it as well, Matt, that when you got out of the military, it was a rough go because you were struggling to find your way in the civilian world. And Chance specifically, I do recall several conversations, not just privately, but publicly on podcasts that you and I have been on the collective, where you were so identified with being a soldier that you couldn't become a civilian. And then the civilian title got smoked out or erased out and put in veteran, and then things felt a little bit better. And so I think that the veteran title is like a Band-Aid to maybe help someone transition mentally into the civilian world that they could have done in about 0.5 seconds the moment that they left the military. But that's not what happens. People get out of the military and they struggle to get into the civilian world, and they patch it with the veteran title, and somehow that's like the salve or the balm that somehow eases them into the reality of the self is now existing in a civilian world. We'll call it as a veteran. But what you are is a civilian within a civilian world, but with some military background. And so the veteran term, I think, is so loosey-goosey that it is all-encompassing for all of the struggles that everyone faces, myself included, when we get out of the military. Now, to my point, as I see it, the real key is how quick you transition within your mind. And so I'll use myself as the example. When I left Tier 1, I put it hard in the rearview mirror. I didn't cling to it. It didn't identify me. It wasn't until just a few years ago, a couple of years ago, actually, that most people realized that I was in the military at one point in my life, because I hard bounced, punched forward into a bunch of different careers, never looked backwards. And it's only just recently that I've started to demonstrate that I was in Tier 1, or I was in the military, or I was an army dude, and now I'm called a veteran. I never called myself a veteran. In fact, it was you, Chance, that encouraged me to start using the term veteran. But to me, it was a foreign term that I never clung to and that I didn't need, that I still don't need. But I respect and I can appreciate that a lot of folks out there love on the term veteran. But I challenge everyone that is listening to this that the term veteran is sometimes misused to alleviate the work that needs to be done of the actual transition between military to civilian. I hope that wasn't too spicy. And if it wasn't too spicy, oh boy, I've got about another 97 levels that we can go.
Got another gear on this. I don't think it was too spicy. I think it was accurate. But I am going to push back on it a little bit, because from the position that you were in, and this is, I'm going to lay out a little comparison here. You were a ninja. Like, for lack of a better term, that's what you were, right? In the early days of JTF2, you were.
Dude, I still am.
You still are.
What
I mean,
the heck,
just at
bro?
the ninja. You were at the ninja museum throwing shurikens, right? Like, absolutely, you are 100%. But the point that I guess I'm trying to make is the fact that the position that you were in, with the level of secrecy and the level of keeping your cards close to your chest, it required you to not identify with that position to begin with, right? And so I think, and I want to get your opinion on this, is that, do you think that played into it another degree? Because for myself, and I don't know about you, Matt, but when I was going through, the identity was pushed by the instruction, right? You are a soldier. You do more before 9 o'clock than most people do all day, blah, blah, blah. All of that whole concept of that be the person, be that identity, be the soldier. And in the dark realm, the dark web, or whatever you want to call it, that you were in, that was like, no, nobody talks about it. We don't talk about anything. You are not that person unless you are that person in the black going to do the job. But outside of that, you are not that person. You have to be something else. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. Is that, do you think that that played into it, in that the acceptance of self, the ability to make that switch, it's easier to do that when you are actively not taking that on as an identity to begin with? What do you think?
I think it's great. I think it's a great logic trajectory. I really like it. I think you're on point. However, so what distinguishes me from you two? What's the difference? We're still the part of the human species. We still have brains. We still have past. We still have futures. We still have presence. We're still in the now. And so to suggest that I'm some sort of rare breed from another planet would be incorrect. And I know I've been accused of being an android to some degree, but I'm not. And so there is no difference between the three of us, other than, to your point, Chance, perhaps I was obligated to not cling to the idea that I was going to constantly talk about how I was in the military. And so perhaps you've made my point by stating that I couldn't talk about it, but you talked about it a lot. And so by talking about it a lot, it self-reinforces. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're now a soldier struggling with soldier problems in a civilian world. And then the title of veteran gets laid over top of that, and somehow it makes it okay. Now, I'm not disrespecting veterans, because there's an entire different side to being a veteran. As I see it, there's two pieces to the veteran puzzle. There's veterans being veterans, and then there's veterans using the term veteran as the nebulous gray zone where the work doesn't get done, because by simply stating I'm a veteran, it confers upon you some latitude or some convenient ability to not like bear down and get to the meat and potatoes of what today's subject is. And that is, what is the self? Who am I? And so by applying the term veteran, maybe, and I'm just positing, maybe the work doesn't get done to understand, well, who am I? Like I had to go through the crash course of 3 hours after I bounced out of the teams. I was now redefining myself without being able to cling to the ship anchor called I was in the military. And so as my careers progressed, and we've talked about this many times with many guests on many podcasts now, that how I ran my life was a constant pursuit of excellence, a constant forward momentum, a relentless curiosity that allowed me to be semi-successful in a number of industries. But if I would have clung to my definition of who I was and stayed in that moment of the past, then I wouldn't have accomplished what I've accomplished. But is life about accomplishing? I don't know. But from my perspective, where I am right now, I'm glad that I had to do a hard reset and put it all in the rearview mirror, not cling to anything, and start creating new senses of self as I moved into the future. So again, veteran, I'm not disrespecting the service. I'm not saying that anyone who served, whether it was served for a week or served for their lifetime, I'm not disrespecting any of that. I have great respect for anyone who served our country in any capacity. So setting that to the side, the other piece that I'm suggesting is the other word veteran sometimes allows people to not move forward. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Matt, you got any thoughts on this?
I do, like a lot. And I really, I don't know, I do disagree with the whole term veteran being two separate entities, because you could apply that to anything, anyone, right? A cook who cook's great and a cook who just gets by, I mean, they're both cooks, right? One's good, one's bad. A veteran that takes the opportunities and experiences and stuff that he brought forward or came from before and brought forward. And then you got a veteran who is lazy and just, oh, I was a veteran, I don't think you can do anything. I don't see that. And as part of acceptance of self, as per this thing, my realization and re-identifying as a veteran, because I shun that hard. Like, don't even talk the word military to me. I am becoming a full-on civilian. I was trying to pull off a Shaun Taylor and just like turn it off, throw it in the rear view mirror. But unfortunately, objects in the rear view mirror are closer than they appear, right? And that was something that crept up on me. And then once I realized I cannot outpace that, and I turned around and said, "Yeah, come on, let's go with me, go forward, moving forward with it." That was more of a realization for me. I agree that different experiences, like Shaun being a tier one dude, and like have to get that experience and shut it off, and then move on to something else, and then move on for something else. I agree with that, but honestly, for me, when I was in the military, that was pretty much the high apex of what things were in the moment. And for me to totally forget about that and totally disregard everything would be a disservice to myself, my past, my identity, and everything else that I grew, learned, and strived for to get to where I am right now, sitting in front of you guys doing a podcast. Right? I would rather accept that, learn from it, and then help me redefine a new self while I move forward, instead of just throw it away in the garbage and disregard that everything that happened. Also, I'm on
Interesting.
Reaching Mushroom Tea right now, so the adaptogens are kicking in. So yes, Shaun, bring it up to 97, buddy. You're not stressing me out today.
I like it.
Good, good.
What do you got?
So I didn't say throw it away, and I didn't say forget it. Maybe you misheard me. I never said that, and I will never say that. I've never ever said in my life that anyone should forget their experiences, because that's who we are. That's what's made us who we are. That's what's made you who you are, Matt. And so what you did state was you're in the military, then you put a hard reset and started to put it behind you. And then it started catching up to you. And that is relearning yourself in the now. And, whether you stay ahead of the past or whether the past passes you, whatever, it doesn't matter. That is a philosophical concept that simply relies you to do action against, and the action is working on yourself, either externally or internally. And so no one has to forget anything. No one has to throw away anything. No one has to pretend to be something that they're not. But what we all have to do is understand ourself, which I started off the conversation with. Well, what is self? And self is who we are right now, not who we were then. But by stating that, I'm not saying throw away the self then, because then is now if you've done the work. If you haven't done the work, the stuff in the past is who you are forever. But if you do the work on yourself, then the past is in us right now and will help us project forward into the future. I hope I made it a bit clearer.
I like that. Now, I got a couple of points here that I want to bring up, because this is great, and I think the spiciness level is right where we should be. Maybe we could probably go a little higher. But what do you call someone who graduates last in their class at medical school? Do you guys know?
Doctor.
Doctor, right? And this
A
is
doctor, a doctor that may not be viewed by his peers as someone that they would want to work on them in a surgery room.
Absolutely. This is what I was going to make this point, is that the titles are what a lot of us cling to, right? And this is what I think you're getting at, is that, the title of veteran, the title of soldier, the title of this or that or the other thing, or doctor, those don't make you who you are. What actually makes you who you are is the amount of work you're willing to put into who you are right now. And so I really like the fact that we're bringing up this point, especially in the veteran world, because you're 100% right that the veteran space, the title of veteran gets used for slack all the time. And it is, I used it as slack for years. I used it as like trying to find more slack, more ways that I could do less, instead of using it to do more, which is what it should be. And I think to your point, Shaun, earlier you said, you know, the three of us aren't any different, but we are. We're all very different, and we all come with varied different difference of potential based on, you know, physical ability and what we have for genetic markers and all these, you know, our makeup. But that potential is unlimited. So like we could all do anything. And I think that's what you're trying to say is that like in no way does, you know, me being me prevent me from going to tier 1. Absolutely not. Same thing with Matt or yourself. But the difference of potential energy going into what we went into is then changed on the daily based on how we're interacting with people, based on how we see ourselves to begin with. And for many years, I didn't know who I was while I was in the military, let alone when I got out. And so I want to get your thoughts on, you know, the difference of potential between every single one of us and how do we utilize our own potential to the best of our abilities in the moment. I'm going to go with Matt first. What do you think?
I think potential is one of those things. It's unquantifiable, really, because it all depends what you're aiming for. Like for me to have the potential to be a world-class mountain biker and compete with Shaun, not even a chance, because I can't even go downhill without getting scared, right? Yeah, sure, practice. Yeah, sure, experience will change that, but I don't believe it'll be at the same level as what Shaun was. I think that potential is something that is grown and developed, and you just have to have the passion to go for it. And I think that's a huge factor in it, is the passion and desire for the potential. Like you can have wasted potential because you don't have a desire to go do something, right? It's a potential is not the defining thing. It is the goal to get to. Is how I think about it.
Shaun, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in line with Matt in regard to that, and it's you know, he raised the subject of mountain biking, but I could easily flip it back on him and say cooking. You know, like I may never be able to achieve the level of cooking that Matt has achieved already, and will continue to excel in. And so it comes down to we could all make comparisons: mountain biking versus horse riding versus cooking versus whatever, macrame champion of the world. It doesn't matter what the trajectory is. What does matter is the know your why, know your how, and apply some velocity. And then it requires passion. And so, you know, Matt had thrown out there kind of casually and quite funnily that he's on reishi right now, and nothing's going to, you know, get under his skin, as it were. It's a great adaptogen. I've been using reishi for plus of 30 years. And combined with some other adaptogenic herbs, it's a freaking awesome little cocktail. And so what does that, why raise that point? Because what it does illustrate is that Matt is in the game. And, you know, maybe Matt wasn't on reishi 2 years ago or 7 years ago or however many years ago, but there was a point when he wasn't, just like there was a point when I wasn't. But at some point in our lives, if we've got enough curiosity and enough passion and enough desire to distinguish ourselves, the self, from yesterday, approaching towards the future, a better self, it requires some consideration as to how to do that better. And so one day reishi didn't exist for Matt. Now reishi does exist for Matt. And so what will he be trying tomorrow? Well, who knows? That's for Matt to decide, or not. And then how does Matt decide to or not? Well, he's got to sit with himself in the now and realize what Matt wants to be. Does Matt want to be static? Does he want to be a growth mindset? Does he want to be a player? Does he not want to be a player? In the game, out of the game, feet up on the couch, not understanding what the game is. All of these things are considerations we should all be considering as to the self of the now. Who am I? What am I externally? Who am I? What am I internally? And the reishi piece is a great proxy for someone who wants more in this life. Maybe for themselves, But ultimately, when you consider it at a deeper level, by wanting more for yourself, you're wanting more for the world around you, if you really look at it from a philosophical perspective. And I think that that was the start of this conversation for me is, and then I, transversely moved across to veterans, that we, as veterans, or more correctly, within the military, we were there to serve our country, not there to serve ourselves. And so when we bounce out of the military, I think that a lot of the hyper focus goes on ourself rather than continuing to serve. And that's cool. I did it myself. I was still serving others around me. Every single career that I've done has always been serving. But at the moment when I was doing it, I wasn't trying to serve the team around me. It just so happened that either instinctually or by luck or whatever, my careers were serving others. But it wasn't until much later that I looked back and thought, oh, wow, I guess that's what I've been doing. And so, my challenge to everyone who's listening to this now or later would be the challenge that I would have liked to have thrown at myself when I bounced out of the military, was to not just serve others, and in so doing, you'll serve yourself better, but consider that's what you're doing, that you are intentionally trying to serve others. I wasn't intentionally trying to do that. I just fell into that trajectory. But I wish someone would have challenged young Shaun and said, hey, bro, you just bounced out of tier 1. You know what you need to do? Go serve the world at a bigger capacity. Because if the right person would have said the right thing at the right time, shortly after I bounced, man, I'd have probably done more for the world. I would have been more of an agent of change, as it were. And so by agent of change, what does that even freaking mean? Well, it means I'm serving myself better, but I'm making the world around me better. And then what's the world around me? What is this construct that we're in? I suppose that's a huge topic that we could dive into, but we probably don't have time.
Yeah, we don't. I don't think another half an hour would do for that kind of a topic. I just want to hit on a couple of good comments here real quick. Lisa jumped in here, said, good evening, everybody. Good to see Lisa. Salty jumps in and he says, I think the experience of the individual leading up to the present sets that definition as much as the choices they make. And it leads to an understanding of the self in pieces. And accepting those without understanding is the real task. I'm not 100%. The last portion there, accepting those without understanding is the real task. I think accepting those without judgment is the real task, at least in my mind. You guys got any thoughts on that, Matt?
No, I totally agree with your take on that, the whole judgment, because not understanding why something happened or what something changed your life or experience, right? Because let's say a bad relationship, coming out of a bad relationship, do I really want to understand why things fell apart? I mean, that's going to just put me in a constant spin of questioning, but having a non-judgment of it and saying, I did my part, good or bad, but that's, in the past and time to move forward. Maybe I can learn from it. Maybe I don't even want to readdress it, but it's something that stuck with me. And if I don't blame myself for it, to keep that reoccurring, then that's more of a benefit than actually trying to not understand it. I kind of got twisted in there, but don't judge yourself on failures, but please understand what actually was going on. And I just want to hit on back to what Shaun was saying previously. Dude, I 110% agree with what you said. Like, it even comes back down to my first intro, right? I'm a health coach who got into it to help myself more than someone else, but I'm also helping other people, right? And that was me learning to serve others, to serve myself, so I'm able to serve others better.
I like that, Shaun. You got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, can you throw his question up again real quick, please? Or more correctly, it was a comment, sorry, not a question. As I read it, I agree with Salty Jinx, because what he's saying is accept the things that happen. Just accept them rather than pretend that they didn't happen. So that's how I see the differences. He's suggesting accept the reality rather than sticking your head in the sand and pretending that you're still in the army. You're not in the army. You're out of the army. And once you accept that reality, then it doesn't mean that you immediately have to understand the massive complexity of not being in the army a day later, or a year later, or a decade later. I believe this, that every single one of us that's on in this live right now, we will, until the day we die, still be trying to understand what our military careers meant to us. I don't think it's a binary switch where it's an on, off, left, right, up, down, in, out, simple opposites of, I didn't understand it yesterday, but today I definitely understand it 100%. It's not that. And I don't think it's a linear progression or an exponential progression either. I think that there's times where in my life I've understood more about my military career, but as I get older and wiser, I understand less. So I think that it's an ebb and flow throughout our lives that I personally feel no one will ever fully understand what it means. But do we have to fully understand it? I don't think so. What I do believe is that we accept that we're not in the military, and then we start moving forward. And you can assign the veteran title to that phase or for the rest of your life, depending on how you use that title correctly, which means you served your country as a veteran. But incorrectly, you get free parking for the rest of your life, because you don't. You don't get any rights. No one confers a knighthood on you. No one says that you're a special individual because you were in the military. And as a veteran, you now get mandatory free parking at every shopping mall. No one gets that. So the serving your country will always get my respect. But then if you go on to serve the greater good as a good veteran, you're going to get my respect. You get double respect, for lack of a better term. But you can serve your country and get my respect. But if you're a goof as a veteran, you don't get my respect. But I'll always respect your service. So I'll respect the service, but I'm not obligated to respect the man or woman. But I'll definitely double respect you if you're a good human being and a veteran. I hope that makes sense.
I like that. That to me that makes a lot of sense, because you're talking about past. I respect what you've done versus I respect you right now, and I think that is a really great thing that we get hung up on. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? And the fact that if you're hung up on the title, you're hung up on the past. We talked about this a couple days ago, and anchoring things into the past. We were talking about with Doc Gino, I think, and it's a challenge for a lot of people, and that's why I started challenging people to say that you're a veteran now. You're not a soldier anymore. Was to to cut that anchor to try to get somewhere else. But I absolutely 100% agree with you. And this is, I just want to postulate something to you guys. I wrote it down here. The concept of discovery and experimentation. And to you guys' point, reishi, I don't even know what that is. So I'm going to look it up as soon as we're done here, because I've never heard of it before. This is the first time I've ever heard of it. And now I'm like, well, Matt's all jacked up about it, and Shaun's been on it for a while. Like, why haven't I ever heard of this? This is the point I think that most people get stuck on, is they hear something new, right? Ooh, reishi. But there's no exploration of it. There's just oh, that sounds neat. Or there is a minor exploration of it without any depth, without any, as you like to say, Shaun, adventure into it, right? There's that, I'm going to look it up on the internet. Oh, okay, well, I read 5 minutes of it. Okay, cool. And then it's gone from your psyche completely, rather than continually seeking out, okay, well, what does it do for people? What does it do for this? How does it affect my physiology? And then start playing with it, start testing things out without any direction, let's say, without any preconceived direction. Let me put it that way. So I'm wondering, what do you guys think in terms of understanding of, acceptance of self as a continual cycle of discovery and experimentation? What do you guys think? Matt, coming to you first.
No, I agree, and I really like how that's going. Is that it is a discovery of self constantly, because once you stop trying to discover new things and stop trying to be more, then sit on the couch, play video games, and die. Right? That's pretty much what it ends up to. You always, I believe that you always have to push forward, and it can be minute things. It could be like looking up reishi mushroom tea in the next, hour or so. It could be, maybe me looking up where Shaun just visited and do more historical research on that and find out where he threw ninja stars and stuff. But I think you always have to be developing. You always have to be growing. You always have to be moving forward. You If you are happy with who you are in this moment, that's great. That's perfect. But strive, keep on moving forward. Do not get stagnant and always evolve.
I like it. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, you've got to have some natural curiosity. And if you don't have the natural curiosity, you've got to make it homework so that you start developing a rote pattern that then becomes your norm, your baseline to have curiosity. So if you don't have it, make some homework, get your homework done for the next year called Get Curious About Life. Now, Chance, I'm going to challenge you because I put up quite a few stories, Instagram stories over the last couple of years that show containers of the various mushrooms that I use as adaptogenic herbs. And I've seen you like them. So your curiosity was a blink of an eye and then no further than that with a like. And so that's what I see happening out there a lot is there's a blink and people are then moving on. And the blink is the limit of their curiosity. And so, Matt has said it. You've got to see something and then you've got to do a little bit of homework. Like if he's curious about any historical or cultural moment from my trip, as many have stated in my DMs that they're vicariously living through the trip, or they're now interested in going and visiting this, or it's been so fun to watch that they're now planning their trip to XYZ country. And I've replied to several of those people saying, well, good, because now my job is done. My job is not here to flare out. My job is to encourage others to be better, to do more, to see their full potential. And that requires some curiosity for someone to look up what a shuriken is, and then perhaps think, wow, I want to make my own shuriken, or what have you. So it requires a little bit of curiosity, and of course, then the obvious pieces, and then to do something about it. Because a little bit of homework, academic homework, doesn't move the needle hardly at all. What does move the needle is looking up reishi, 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 and then considering, where can I go buy that? Well, go down to the local granola head shop. Go down to the local supplement shop. Go online and find a legit reishi location. There's Harmonic Arts is the first company that comes to mind. Harmonic Arts, which is a good Canadian company that has good practices, is pretty granola, and they have a bunch of different products that I would stand behind and say they're legit. Their efficacy is good, where you will, I'd say 9 times out of 10, feel the results from a 30-day supply of reishi, or the various products where there's combinative effort or effects of several different mushrooms, which I'm not going to list off. So, the academic curiosity of how do you spell reishi is barely going to move the needle. What will move the needle is action. Put your money where your mouth is, as the old saying goes. And what will it cost you? Well, it'll cost you a whole lot less than not getting better. If you spend $30 this month on buying some Harmonic Arts reishi, and then a month from now, you're freaking twice the person that you were because your mind's clearer, you're less sick, you're blah, 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 all of the things. Your productivity is up. Your expansiveness of yourself. Again, we've yet to define what self is. The expansiveness of that to feel the universe more, to understand the universe better, to just listen to people in a whole different harmonic way. Harmonic Arts, sorry, I had to do it. You've got to put your money where your mouth is, and that money that $30 is money well spent. What isn't money well spent is continuing to watch Netflix. Cancel your Netflix if you have to. If you're a little tight on the budget and you can't buy some high quality reishi, well, cancel Netflix for a month. No big deal, bro. Game of Thrones, you've watched it 12 times already. You don't need to watch it 13 times. Whoever's listening to this, start ditching some of the negative practices or routines in your life and start putting them towards positive routines that are going to create a better self.
You bring up a great point. And you're right. I have liked a lot of your stories and things like that you put up, your images of like, this is what I had for breakfast and this is what I'm having for lunch and these are my little things that I use. And the perspective I had at the time, and I'm by no means making an excuse, because you're absolutely right. I looked at it, was like, good for him, check, and then and moved on. And the thing is that I was going to bring up though is that my perspective, the lens that I was looking at those images through, was through a I was not looking at it in terms of discovery and experimentation. I wasn't looking to discover anything new in that picture. I was thinking of it as a good for him, right? Good job. Without applying it to myself. And I think that's where the disconnect for myself is, at least, is when I see other people doing well or doing the things that they are benefiting from, I'm just happy for them. Well done. Good job. Without applying what they're doing to me. And this is where I think the concept of acceptance of self is trying to understand, not just trying to understand, but taking the time to understand the patterns that you are setting yourself, which is what I was doing. And I just recently put out that post of my circle of failure, where I get caught up in that same cycle over and over and over again. Had I not written that down, I would not know where that line is that goes, that's where the failure is. That's where I need to put my focus on. That's what I want to get better at. And so I'm going to look it up. I actually wrote down reishi and I misspelled it. I wrote down RAESHI, but now that I have the correct spelling, it's going to be even faster to look it up. So I'm set. What are you thinking, Shaun? I saw you unmute yourself. So what do you got?
Yeah. So this is the reason of this conversation, or this is the reason for these kind of conversations, is so that it's not that I'm trying to challenge the entire world, but these are conversations that don't typically happen, but they should have been happening decades ago so that all of us could benefit from it, so that not the gauntlet is thrown down, but the challenge is put out there in this way. So, Chance, you saw the stuff that I was putting up and you thought, good for him, he's doing so well. Did you ask yourself, well, why don't I do that? Why can't I do that well? Or why can't I be that? Or why can't I be him plus plus? Why can't I surpass him? Did you ever consider the question to yourself as, well, if he can do it, I should be doing it. Or if he can do it, why can't I do it? Or if he's doing it, why is he doing it? Or was it just a simple thought of, good for him?
To that, it was a simple thought of good for him, and it was the continuation of that thought was, I have other things that I'm working on currently. And that, so it was like when you challenged me on my nutrition early on this year, that was a big one, was like, man, I need to really sort out my nutrition. So now I'm focusing on protein intake daily. And I still haven't gotten that down yet to a consistent process where I'm constantly getting the right amount of protein every day. And I don't want to add more things in there, because if I start adding more stuff in, then I'm going to be trying to do too many things at once, and I'm going to fall back into that failure cycle again, because I'm going to miss something or I'll forget about it, and it'll be 3 or 4 days later, and then I'll be like, oh, well, okay, that one is out, but then it's going to confuse me, and I get into this whole cycle of failure because I'm trying to do too many things at once. I'm juggling. And so I never got into that next step of, man, I want to do all those things. I want to be that good, because I'm just trying to focus on the one thing to make sure that that gets really hammered into my systems as a solid process that I don't have to think about anymore, and I can offload it. But right now I can't offload it yet. It's still an active process. So until I get that done, I'm not going to take on any more without getting that sorted, because I've taken the time to think about it, and I've taken the time to accept who I am and how my brain works and how it accepts these processes. And I know that if I take on 4 or 5 things at once, none of them are going to work because I'm not focused on anything, if that makes sense. Matt, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, Netflix and everything is an attention stealer. Get rid of it. Back to your point, Chance. I hear what you're saying, but I mean that also turns into a perfectionism thing too as well, where you're in that loop where I must perfect this, and therefore I cannot do anything else at the same time, right? And that's a paradox on itself, right? Um, Even just like minor research, not even adding things into it, but making a plan for it, that would actually take you a step forward too as well. Instead of going through, I must be perfect, I must be perfect, I must be perfect. Yeah, I must be perfect, but I'm also looking outside the window. I must be perfect, and it's like, oh, here's something else I can add when I am ready to get into it, right? So doing the research and stuff would be beneficial too as well to getting down that road, and adding more. And like, I understand what you're saying, having that baseline where you have your perfect proteins and all that stuff. You have your baseline, and anything you add to it, if things go up, feel better, things go down, feel worse, at least you can always return to that baseline. I totally understand that. And but also, if you're stuck on being, I must be perfect, I must be perfect, you'll never go up or down, and you'll never find a different change and stuff as well. But again, you've identified to yourself that you have your own process and you have your flaw point. I don't know how else to say it, but you have that trigger where you must try to avoid. But maybe this loop can also intertwine with this loop.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't seek perfection in any way, but I do 100% hear you. Sean, what are you thinking?
Well, they're not mutually exclusive, and I think that's the issue here is saying it's this or that, and it's neither. You can do everything at once to a degree where there's some efficacy or there's some impact. And so I'm just going to, throw out a casual statement there. You get a big jug of protein, you get the small jug of reishi, you pour one jug into the other, you put the lid on, you shake it a bunch of times, then every day you put your scoop in. There, you've got 2 birds with one stone. Do you need 3 birds with one stone? Because I can do this all day long. There's nothing that is required to complete 100% in order for you to start the next thing when we're talking about nutrition, or a whole pile of other trajectories that we could line up and discuss. And so the failure here is not the process. The failure is the mindset. What are we talking about? Not mindset. Any ideas? When do we talk about?
Tomorrow is when we start.
Oh, yeah, right. Next week. We've got a whole week of mindset. And so have we ever mentioned mindset before? Yeah, about 1 bajillion times in the past. And so mindset is key to anything in life, to not just success, but how to work through failure, how to see our blind spots, how to ebb and flow in life. Mindset is where the real game is at. Mindset not only externally, how to juggle reishi and protein into a single jug, but mindset internally. A lot of mindset is viewed externally, how to do this, how to do that, how to win, how to blah, blah, blah. But mindset is an internal process. Just the last few days, I've been dropping kind of like matrix references over the podcasts. And so something that comes to mind is in the Matrix, there towards the start of the first movie, Neo finds himself in a space called the construct. And I don't know if you guys recall that. It's like this, It's this empty white space. And it's called the construct. And the construct is simply, as I understand it anyway, the space between the real world and the digital world. The construct is a program that allows the individual within the matrix world to load up, to gear up, to create programs within the program called the construct. So I think we probably all remember the famous scene where I need guns, lots of guns, and here comes the guns. And so then they gun up. And the construct, I feel, is like almost our minds, our sense of self. If you can, within your own construct, create what you want, then you can get to work on going out there and doing it in the actual world. And so there's like the space between our brains and the three-dimensional world all around us, where it's our mind, our sense of self. So inside of ourselves, we're responsible to create within our construct the externalization of what we want to accomplish. If you want to go kick that ass, you've got to be in your construct and saying guns, and here they come. Or if you want to go get better at nutrition, you've got to, in your construct, think, how do I do that? And now you've got 2 jugs of protein and reishi in your hand, and you're doing that. And so you've got to construct the path forward to success or to the outcome that you're seeking in the external world. And I think that not enough people consider their construct, consider their self as to what they want to accomplish in the external world outside of our internal world. It's like the connection isn't made between what we would like and how to do it. There's this space in between that is self. And the self isn't just like the external world or external thoughts or our external actions. And the self isn't just my little internal universe that I kind of bumble around in my head and think about all kinds of things, all the rabbit holes at warp factor 3. The construct is for us to control. It's our program, the construct, and we can make it absolutely white silence while there's chaos all around us, or we can have silence all around us, and in the construct, we can create our own chaos. And so the construct is for us to manage. It's for us to program. It's for us to, last night I was walking around Kyoto. It's insane, man. Insane. It's peak Christmas here. And I mean, there's 1 gajillion people. And it's not like North America where everyone walks, like linear. It's like a freaking swarm of, it's an aquarium, a wild aquarium where there are no rules, but everyone learns how to move correctly through all the millions of people. They just flow. So in that external world, everyone's learned how to move together. But in my internal world, I can choose to have silence with the external chaos, or I can choose to have chaos while there's chaos. It's my construct to run. And I think that a lot of people don't consider how to run the construct. They just become victim to the external world or to the internal world. They don't control the middle space called the construct.
That is a great way to set us off for next week. Let me tell you, that is going to be great. Matt, you got any thoughts on this?
Shaun, when you were walking around Kyoto, did you see the girl in the red dress?
Well done, well done.
No, like what you're saying there is what I'm taking from that is basically mental rehearsals and mental imagery of a situation. And yeah, you're right. It is lacking right now in our world. We're very responsive to the stuff in our environment, and we don't actually plan and mentally rehearse for it in advance. I noticed that in school because we're doing a lot of presentations. We're doing stand up in front of classes. We're doing like full on sit down. Let's have a mock business meeting, that kind of stuff. And a lot of the people just stress about it. It's like, oh, I'm going to this. I'm going to go to this. What's going to happen about this? And it's like, mentally rehearse, practice it, get into your head that this is what you're going to do. And then when you get in the situation, it's already done. You just got to execute. You've mentally gone through everything. You just have to physically make it reality, right? And I totally agree with the concept of construct in that regards.
I think I don't know if this is a pushback or not, but this is just something in my head at this point in time, is that the average citizen doesn't have the skill set in order to engage in the construct to begin with. And I think that is the true issue here, is that absolutely, Shaun, you're 100% correct. Anybody can do this, but it goes back to my original kind of point when I was talking about the difference of potential, is that not only have you taken the time and done the training and spent the time in your own head working these spaces and developing it to a point that you have control over your construct, the average person that has never even considered this or even applied the fact that the matrix could be used in everyday life, there's a whole nother level of engaging in this process, that it's going to be a step-by-step process. And like, the average person, I'm going to say this because I know for myself, to create the construct right now in my head and say, okay, well, this is now my reality, that's going to conflict with what my reality is that I have made over the last 41 years. Because now if I want something different than what I have, I can't make it appear right now, because it's going to take time, and it's going to take training, and it's going to take processing, it's going to take exploration, it's going to take all kinds of development over time, which you have because you've done it. So I think that there is a construct space between creating your own construct and where people are at right now. So there's going to be some development time, at least in my mind. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. At one point, I used to be that as well. Like, not to use too many Matrix references, but at one point I was plugged in. Like, before I joined the military, I was plugged in. I was a skinny, underperforming kid. I was average. In fact, I was below average. And so at some point, I unplugged and got to work in the construct. When did I do it? Doesn't matter. Time is immaterial anyway. Time is only now. And you can either tell yourself the lie that, I don't have time. And I think I've dropped the Merovingians quote on this aspect before. And so, if someone doesn't want to do the work, they should be asking themselves, why don't they want to do the work? Not, can they do the work? I'm no different than anyone else when I was an average person before I unplugged. And so that's the Matrix quotes. I'm not going to drop any more Matrix isms, because it's, of course, philosophical or metaphysical, or it's tangential to the conversation, which is self. And so what is our self? We've got our internal self and we've got our external self. And I know we're coming to the end of the podcast. I'm just going to take this opportunity before we go into final comments and state that for all things good, namaste, for all things good, don't any veteran out there misconstrue anything that I stated. Veterans, for me, in my world that I exist in right now, come in two forms. The veteran that served their country and that I will always have respect for. And then the follow-on title of veteran, which means you don't get any rights or responsibilities, but you can either be a good veteran or a crappy veteran. And try to be a good veteran so that you're representing all of the other veterans out there in the best positive light within our country, so that veteran title, served your country, can be combined with they're good people.
That's a great point. And you're right. Before we get into final statements on this, we're able to be whatever we want to be, as you've said many times, right? It's up to us to choose who we want to be. And I think that if every veteran out there chose to be a good veteran, that means the standard of what a veteran would be up here, and we'd be able to keep it up here rather than down low. So with that, Matt, let's get some final thoughts on anything we've gone over today, because it's been quite a bit. But acceptance of self, the Matrix, whatever. What do you got?
Matrix, good movie. Acceptance of self, it is a process that you do have to go through for some people and for some times, and with some experiences. And it is a growing thing to be accepting of yourself. However, but once you do accept yourself, accept your past, accept your experiences, and able to learn and grow from them, it is a force multiplier for further evolutions.
Absolutely. Shaun, final thoughts?
Well, accept yourself because that's all you are right now. You're not anything other than yourself right now. And if you're unhappy with that self, if you can't accept that self, there's a reason for it. There's some incongruity. If you don't like what you feel, or you don't like what you hear, or you don't like what you see, if you can't accept yourself now, then get to work on the version of self that you want to be.
That is a great line. Quickly, I'm going to hit on a couple of these comments before we shut her down. We got Saya in the house. Good to see you, Saya. She says, daily resets to want more for yourself. This is a great system to be able to put into place. If you can wake up in the morning, reset yourself. Now I want more. Let's go after it. And then you can do it. Lisa Meyer jumped in here and said, I love it. Already doing it. Absolutely. El Picasso, new face here. I like it. Hey, people, how's it going? Good, man. He says, that's why Einstein never brushed his hair. He's too busy on his projects. And he engages Tesla would build working models in his head before ever building a real model. And absolutely, these things is it's I'm not even gonna get into it because that's a whole nother podcast. But the only thing I'm gonna add at the end here is that the only person who can accept you is you. The only person that who can accept me is me, and that is the key point I think in all of this is that it takes discovery, experimentation, takes passion, takes all kinds of things, but the only person that can do it is you. So learn, build, grow. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.